Good morning and welcome to the Petitti Pro Garden Show. Thank you all so much for getting up early and being with us on this early Saturday morning. Like I told you a few weeks ago, we have a special guest with us today, and we have Dakota. Welcome, Dakota.
Hello.
Hi. So what we're going to do, we're going to answer some of your questions that you have called in, and then we're going to talk to Dakota about gardening, organic gardening, the whole farmer's market thing that we're always talking about from a child's perspective, and see how he feels and why he feels it's important. So we're going to go ahead and open up our show, like always, with a word of prayer. If you would just assume an attitude of prayer. Father, we just come before you right now, and we thank you for your goodness, and we thank you for your grace. We thank you for all that you have done for us, and we just ask you to lead and guide us in all we do, in our steps, in our words, and our actions, Father. We just thank you for all the blessings that you have given us, from our crops to the folks in our lives. We just thank you and we praise you. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right. Well, several of you have had questions this week about several different things. And so we want to make sure that we go over those. So this week we had a little bit of heat. We've had a little bit of cool. We've had some rain. And so a lot of things are going on in the garden. First of all, Sarah had some skunk issues, and she is not the only one. Several people this week came into the store and had some skunk issues. So if you are having skunk issues in your gardens, or maybe even just in your backyard, there are some things that you can do now to repel them from your lawn, but also to prevent them from coming back. So first of all, we want to get rid of them now so that they're not in our yard. And Repel-Zol is a product by Bonide that you're going to want to use. It's an all organic natural product. You can spray it around. It is sort of odor intrusive itself, but the skunks doesn't like it either. And so you can spray it around your plants, in your yard, in the lawn area, and it will definitely help get those skunks away from you. Now, the skunks are there because they're hungry, most likely, and there's something in your lawn that they are wanting to eat. Now, most of you are battling with Japanese beetles, another question that we have today. The Japanese beetles are definitely an issue, and before the Japanese beetle becomes a Japanese beetle, it is a grub. So usually the skunks are after the grubs. At this stage, there aren't any grubs in the ground that are really big enough for the skunks to be going after. So right now, they're hungry, they're searching, but they're not finding, and that's why they're staying out in your lawns, in your garden areas, even longer than normal, because they keep looking for food. Right now, you're not seeing the grubs because they are all Japanese beetles, and even the Japanese beetles that are laying their eggs, they haven't matured into grub form, they're still in the egg form. So they haven't got to the stage where it's going to fill the belly of the skunk up at all. But that is probably why they're there. They can still sense that the grub was in the lawn or that the egg is there, and it's just not enough to feed them. So to prevent them from coming back in the fall, or even next spring, you're going to want to put Milky Spore down. And Milky Spore is an all-natural product. I've been using it for 25 or 30 years. The best way to use it is in the dust form. You put down a teaspoon every 3 to 4 square feet. In the water, the rain, whatever will help it grow, and that spore will disperse itself throughout your lawn. And as the grub eats on the dirt and any microbes that's in your soil, it ingests the spore of the Milky Spore, and it blows up their stomachs. Sort of sounds gross, doesn't it, Dakota?
Yep. No way.
But it works. It works wonderfully. Also, it's by the St. Gabriel's Company that guarantees it for 10 years. So you're only going to do it 10 years. So if you're using a chemical right now on your lawn to control the grubs, whatever it might be, it's only going to work for one season, and the grubs are going to be back. This spore continues to live in your lawn or in your landscape beds or in your garden for up to 10 years. And if you are fertilizing organically and not using any synthetic chemicals, your Milky Spore will even last longer. But they guarantee it for 10 years, even if you are fertilizing chemically. But those salt-based, petroleum-based fertilizers will break it down a little bit more quickly, so they can only guarantee it for 10 years. But if you are fertilizing organically, you are definitely going to be able to get a lot longer out of it. So hopefully that will prevent the skunk issues in the following year. As we're going back to the Japanese beetle, it's going to kill the grub so they never turn into Japanese beetles. So it's a twofer. You're getting a wonderful product that's going to control the grubs so you don't have the skunks. Also the moles in your lawn, it controls that. But also you're not going to have as many Japanese beetles because you don't have any grubs turning into Japanese beetles that are eating your basil up right now, your beans up, your porcelain vine, your roses, so many things in your landscapes and your gardens. So this Milky Spore product is going to be great. Now, let's go back to stopping the Japanese beetles now. We are definitely in a Japanese beetle issue. I think probably within 10 days to 2 weeks, they will be gone. And that's when you're going to start seeing grub development again as fall comes on. But as of right now, to control that Japanese beetle, Bonide, again, wonderful product in their Japanese beetle killer. Also Captain Jack's labeled for the Japanese beetle. And both of them organic products. You can use them right on your food crops and harvest the same day. What a blessing that is. So you want to go ahead and use those two products to control the Japanese beetles, and your plants will start to come back. Make sure that you are doing an adequate fertilization. If it is your basil, use your garden tone again. If your roses have been eaten up, remember it's going to take extra nutrients for that plant to develop new leaf tissue, new flowers. So you want to put on an additional fertilization, and your rose tone is what you're going to want to use for your roses. So an additional fertilization anytime a plant is under some stress is going to be beneficial to the plant, and then of course to you as well. And the next question that we have was about tomato blight, and everyone seems to be battling tomato blight right now. Late blight is in full swing. I bet you guys are dealing with it too, aren't you?
Yep.
Everyone's dealing with tomato blight right now, and it is definitely an issue. Copper fungicide is going to help, but if you have a really bad case, your best results are going to be found in good air circulation through your crop. So trim up your bottom leaves, but remember when you are trimming up your bottom leaves, every leaf you touch with your pruners or your scissors, whatever you're trimming with, is getting that blight spore on it. You need to make sure that you're not traveling the spore to the upper healthy leaves. So you want to make sure that you take your copper fungicide, give your pruners and your hand a quick mist so you're not traveling that spore up the plant. Also, make sure that you hit the ground around it and any lower plants that the rain might hit and bounce the spore off of and back up onto your plant. It's very important. If you don't want to waste your copper fungicide, it's not like it's a very expensive product, but if you don't want to waste it, you can have a little bowl of peroxide and dip your pruners and your hand in that before you move on up the plant, and that will help. Now, some people say, well, if it works for your pruner and your hand to kill the spore there, why can't I just use the peroxide on the plant? And you can. It will kill the spore. It's also going to kill your leaf. And with no leaf tissue, you have no photosynthesis and the plant's going to die, and then you're not going to have any tomatoes anyhow. So you want to make sure that you're doing it properly and you're using the proper, product on the plant. Several people with blight has come in this week and said, well, I read on the internet, you hear this all the time.
I do.
Yep, don't you? I read on the internet if you mix dish soap and baking soda, and I'm not sure what the other product was. If you mix it all together and spray, you can completely stop the blight. And like you've heard me say before, that is a lie from the pit of hell. And it is, because it doesn't work. You are never going to stop and halt a disease like that with a blend of something like that. So what you want to do, that is great as a preventative measure. So when you plant your tomatoes and everything is perfect and beautiful, if you start spraying one of these little homemade remedies on your plant, a lot of times you will be able to prevent it. But if you have the blight, if you have the if you have the powdery mildew, those kind of things, once you have the disease, these little homemade remedies really don't help control it the best. So you want to make sure that you are using a product that is made to halt those diseases, and you're going to have much better luck. Next question we had was about burning bush. A lady called in, was sure that her burning bush had powdery mildew. I had never ever heard of powdery mildew on a burning bush in 34 years of landscaping. I said, you know what, I really need you to take a picture, bring a leaf in, something. So her husband took some trimmings, put them in a baggie, brought them into the store. They had some discoloration, so she thought she had powdery or downy mildew, which in fact was the effect that was changing the color of the plant was from the insect that was on her plant, not a disease. She had spider mite on her burning bush. So if you notice a discoloration, before you jump to the conclusion that you have a disease, you should make sure that you always check on the bottom side of the leaf. If you have some type of a speckling on the bottom side of the leaf, usually it is an insect. So what we did, we tapped his leaves onto a white piece of paper, got out the magnifying glass, and sure enough, we found the spider mites. And then we went to a insect control to kill the mites, and we used neem oil, a very good product. But remember, when you're using the essential oil products, neem or all seasons oil, you want to make sure you're not doing it in the middle of the day on a hot day. Cloudy days or morning or late afternoon, even evening hours are going to be best so you don't have any leaf burn. But we can control that. Also, this plant is stressed now because it's already changing its discoloration of leaf, so it's stressed. And that's when, you're going to want to do an additional fertilization. Last question that we had this week was about the blossoms falling off their cucumber plants. And when your blossoms fall off your cucumber plants, it's just like when you have blossom end rot on your tomatoes. You have a calcium magnesium deficiency, and you want to give them some additional nutrients. Remember, the tomato blossom set is a great way to get a quick douse of the calcium and magnesium to your plant through a foliar feed, and you can do that and not have that issue. Again, additional tomato fertilization on all of those viners that have blossom rot problems is going to help that, because tomato fertilizer specifically has that additional amount of calcium and magnesium in it, and it's going to help feed the plant so that the future blossoms don't fall off because they have all the nutrients that they need. So if you have questions that you would like to ask and have them answered on the air, you can do a multitude of things to get your questions to me. You can give us a call at 330-455-5997. You can fax me your questions at 330-455-5998, but then I don't get to see them. So that we can see your issue, you can email me your questions at Cindy Petitti, that's CindyPetitti @gmail.com. Or better yet, bring your question into the store. You can get whatever you need right then to fix it, and you can do that at 5828 Columbus Road in Michelin Township. We're right on the corner of Columbus Road and Broadway with a Louisville address, 44641. We do have some specials going on this week. We have dill and basil on sale. For our radio listeners only, $1.50 a pot. If you are not, and you don't come in and say you heard about the special on the radio, they'll just be on sale for $2. But you'll get an additional 50 cents off per pot if you say you heard it on the radio. And also, all of our fruit trees are 10% off this week. Well, we are now going to talk to Dakota. So, Dakota, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us your first name, your last name, and who your parents are, and how you got involved in gardening.
Well, my name is Dakota Albertoni, and my dad is Tony Albertoni. My mom's Betsy Libby.
Perfect.
And
so where do you go to school?
I go to school at Washington Elementary.
What grade are you going to be in the fall?
I'm going to be in 5th grade.
5th grade. Okay, so how old are you?
10.
You're 10. Okay. So Dakota's 10 years old, and you sort of live in the country.
Yes.
Yeah, you live in the country. So tell us how you got involved in gardening.
Well, my mom was in the garden as long as I can remember.
Right.
And I would go to almost every farmer's market I could.
Right. So where does your mom, what farmer's market does your mom participate in?
She of course participates
in ours in the wintertime, but in the summertime
she usually goes to the Alliance Farmers Market.
And the Alliance Farmers Market is going on today. They start at 9 a.m.
Yes.
Yeah. And they go until noon. Mm-hmm. Right. And she grows a lot of different things, doesn't she?
Yes.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, a lot of different things. So if you come to our winter farmers market, you will get to see Betsy and Dakota and Tony sometimes.
Blackbird Meadows.
What's the name of your farm?
Blackbird Meadows.
Blackbird Meadows, exactly. So you'll see all their produce at the farmers markets. And in the wintertime, I think it's Grandma that does some baking and sells some things.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Lemon bread.
Lemon bread is so good. It's my breakfast most of the winter mornings because I buy enough of it that it lasts me between markets. So Dakota, tell us a 10-year-old's perspective on gardening. What does it mean to you to have a garden? And also, your mom gardens pretty much organically too.
Yes.
Right. That's why we became such good friends. Because if she was throwing chemicals down on her garden, I don't think I'd have been near as good a friend with her.
I don't think I would either.
Exactly. So what do you think about gardening?
Well, I think it's very nice because you know exactly where it comes from. And
Yes.
you don't have to have a 10-minute drive to go to the supermarket and buy it, and you wonder, where did it come from?
Where did it come from? Oh, and also what was sprayed on it.
Yeah.
And even if it's organic, sometimes you never know who picked it or how far away it came from.
Yeah.
Even organic produce at the grocery store, no offense, but there was a big carbon footprint sometimes to get them to the grocery store. There's so much trucking to get it there. And like you said, no drive to the grocery store.
Yeah, which saves gas.
Exactly. Saves gas.
Saves the world.
It saves the world. Exactly.
Victory.
Victory. Definitely. So you just go out to the garden if you need a tomato and just pull a tomato.
Yep.
Exactly. So what else do you guys grow and harvest in your gardens?
Well, my favorite, broccoli.
Broccoli. Is it getting ready right now?
Yeah, we've had it for a few weeks.
But you guys start early.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you guys start your plants?
Well,
By seeds.
yeah, by seed.
Right. By mostly all seeds. And you start them in flats?
Yes, we start them in flats.
And when do you start?
Around February.
February. And where do you start these plants in February?
We start them right at your place.
Right at my place, yeah.
Yeah.
So Dakota and Betsy come over, and they do all this seed work in their flats at the greenhouse, and then we keep them at our place until they're ready to go in the ground. And then they come and pick them up, and they're ready to be planted. And that's usually in April. You guys start planting some of your cold crop stuff, and then in May, you start your other stuff. And then you start harvesting, and then start taking to the farmers markets. Right.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit more why you think it's important for not only kids to be involved in gardening, but everyone to garden.
Well, if more people garden organically, the earth would be much healthier.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be so much healthier. And then don't you
Very.
think it's important for kids to learn about gardening as a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah. And why do you think that's important?
Well, I think it's,
Because then when they're learning as a kid, then they'll do it as an adult, won't they?
yeah.
Exactly. And then as, like so many times, don't you think that like other kids will listen to you more than they would listen to someone like me?
Yeah.
Exactly.
No offense.
No offense, thanks, but I'm none taken. But I totally believe that is so true, that when they see that it's cool to garden,
One kid to another.
one kid to another, exactly, they're going to be so much more likely to want to garden. Even if, you were very blessed with parents that wanted to garden. But don't you think even sometimes, and you have to admit this, that you listen to me about stuff or another kid more than you want to even listen to your parents about it?
Sometimes. Sorry, Dad.
Exactly. And that is so true. So sometimes even if your parents garden, it's sort of hard sometimes to always take that in. I know that my daughter is old now. She's 28 years old. She doesn't want to listen to me all the time about gardening. She'll find something else out, or something that I might even know from someone else. And then we talk about it now that she's an adult. But she wouldn't want to listen to it from me when she was a kid. But when you talk to someone else, then it makes it more interesting even. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that like when you go to school or when you're at a farmer's market, there are so many kids that I know from our farmer's market that are like totally drawn to you, that want to hear what you have to say.
Yep.
They do.
Pretty much.
Yeah, they do. And they come and then you tell them all about your produce. And also if you come in while Dakota's there, he'll tell you all about the garden center.
Yep.
Yeah, you do.
I do.
I know, because so many times he knows as much as somebody that's there knows, because you spend a lot of time there in the springtime.
I do.
You do. So as you're getting involved in the gardening, so how much gardening do you do? You have to
Well-
be honest now. I'm not asking your mom.
Around 2/4.
Really? So you do some planting with your mom
Yes.
and weeding?
Mm-hmm.
That's the hardest, huh?
Yeah.
Isn't that the bummer? That's why so many people, they start gardens and they all have really good intentions, but then the weeding is so much work.
Yeah, and then they think, oh, well, this is going to be too much work, and they walk away from it.
Exactly. Right. So you have to really be dedicated to your garden and know that in the foresight, it's going to be a lot of work. You have to know that, right?
Yeah, you have to.
Right, and because then you can be overwhelmed. So if you had a suggestion for someone that's just starting a garden, a kid or an adult, could you give them a little bit of advice?
Let's see. Well, when I first started to garden, I was a small garden.
Exactly. I'm with you. A small garden, Dakota. That is exactly what I was looking for. Because if you start small, you don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah, and then you grow bigger and bigger.
And bigger and bigger. And then every year, you know what to expect so you can get your garden a little bit bigger. Because don't you find that some people, they decide, oh, I'm going to garden. And they make this huge, enormous garden.
Yeah.
And they get it all planted. And it looks great. And then what happens?
And then the weeds come.
And then the weeds come. Exactly.
Bum, bum, bum.
There's so many weeds and you're just overwhelmed. You just never have enough time to get all the weeding done. And then finally they just give up. They're like, it's not worth it. But if you do a little bit at a time and you realize, doesn't it? It makes it so much better. You hit the nail on the head, Dakota, with starting small. I always tell that to people that's never gardened before. Don't get yourself overwhelmed with too much at the beginning, because then they don't know about insects and diseases that they're going to run into.
Oh, yeah.
So not only do they start off, they have all these weeds to deal with, then all of a sudden they have tomato blight, or they have, powdery mildew on their cucumbers. And then they're just like overwhelmed, and then they let all of that work that they did at the beginning, they just let it all be a waste.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any harvest because they never did any weeding. And the weeds end up at the end of the season bigger than the plants. And then what do we do as women and as kids? We call our husbands and our dads and our friends and say, just come and till it all under because I just can't do it. And then if you do have everything done right, you control the weeds, you control insects and diseases, and you've done everything right, at the end of the season, what do we have?
A beautiful garden.
We have a beautiful garden and we have a beautiful harvest. So what kind of things can we do with our harvest? Like, let's say we picked 2 bushels of tomatoes. So you guys, I know what you do with your 2 bushels of tomatoes. You sell them at the farmers markets.
And Dad eats them.
And Dad eats them. Yes. Yeah, me too. Because I love tomatoes. But also, you can learn to can and freeze and preserve.
Yep.
And at Petitti's, we do offer classes on how to do all these types of things. If you want to learn to can, if you want to learn to freeze, how to freeze, what vegetables freeze better than can, which vegetables are better dehydrated. Do you guys have a dehydrator?
Yes.
Yeah. I love my dehydrator. I make tomato chips in my dehydrator. Slice my tomatoes real thick, put them in the dehydrator, and then I have these dehydrated tomato chips. They're so amazing. And then you can rehydrate them in the wintertime, and it's sort of like having a fresh tomato putting in your sauce. So it's amazing. It really is. So if you had a word or two, a sentence, Dakota, to wrap up our show on giving a good recommendation to a kid or an adult that's just getting started, what words of recommendation, of advice would you give them?
Well, like I said, start out small and as the years go on, maybe get a little bigger and bigger. Mm-hmm. And it's really good.
It is so good. And not to use any chemicals.
Don't.
Exactly. Don't use any chemicals. Because, Dakota, because of the way your parents raise you on a healthy diet, you're probably not sick very often, are you?
No.
Mm-mm. Exactly. And your mom and dad are pretty healthy?
I'm probably sick more than from the school lunches more than I am from my house.
Exactly, right. So before long, we're going to have to start packing your lunches so you don't have to eat school lunches.
I do usually.
You usually do that, right. Exactly. Well, Dakota, thank you so much for being with us today. This has just been a joy for us. And we will definitely love to have you come back next season when we do another show. And we'll talk about something maybe a little bit more in depth at that time. Okay?
Okay. I always learn something new from your show. So
thank you so much, Dakota. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And thank you all so much for listening today. We want to remind you that the Alliance Farmers Market will be starting at 9 o'clock. The Canton Farmers Market is going on right now, and the North Canton Farmers Market also starts at 9 a.m. Don't forget to support your local farmers. Remember, know your food, know your farmer. And it's very important to know what you're eating because you are what you eat. We want to thank you all so much for for being with us today and having us into your home. And we will be right back with you next Saturday morning right here on The Light, 95.9.